As the opening title says there, a good way I like to remember GPDR is, or no, I don't like to remember it that way. GDPR is Get Data Protection Right. Great typo in the first bit there. But that's why I use this Get Data Protection Right. We're so used to putting D and R next together from BCDR. When you talk about it a bit, you sometimes trip up. So that's how I remember it. Because we're talking about data, there's usually a customary "this is who I am" slide, but I wanted to put a different take on it. If you're a law-abiding citizen with a white hat on, you still have data scattered all over the place. Some that you accept and some you might not know about. So I threw up a few ideas whilst I was driving home thinking about what would go in the slides. And electoral roll, that data has been sold amongst marketing companies since about 1995. Your landline bill could be different to your broadband bill. And then these ones. Every time you leave the country on an airplane, when you go airside, you go into the ARINC database, which goes probably back to the CIA. So even law-abiding citizens have loads of data that other people are looking after them. It sometimes helps to just sit down and think about how other people are looking after you. So the published agenda was know what you know what you don't know where you're going. And that's what remained in the programme. It's nice, it's short, simple. Everything should be as simple as it can be, but not simpler. But it's a bit vague. So I've updated it to how it was, where it's going, and what I suggest you can do about it. These are my opinions. It's important you know these are my opinions, and other people may answer this differently. I'm not currently in the GPDR region, but I spent 2 years as an appointed DPO preparing for GDPR, and I'm not a lawyer, but I am married to a lawyer. So, oh yes, I was. She doesn't know what photographs have gone in this slide deck yet. Let's go on to. I said we'd talk about where it was before the clock started ticking on GDPR. So in many of the organisations I was in, someone had been appointed as DPO, but not from an information security background, not from a data governance background, but just be the person responsible for registering a form with the ICO and sending them a cheque. You know, it used to be 35 quid for a small business and 500 quid for a big business. It's probably changed. And they would make sure that the registration followed what they were doing. If you put up CCTV, were the warnings right, did you update the ICO? If you went for ANPR, did you put the right warnings up, did you update the ICO? So this was the DPO, was really the person who checked the paperwork with the ICO. They might talk to legal, and they might be called in when to put a signature on the bottom of a contract review process. They might go out for some external training. There are bodies that did Data Protection Act training, and they might have a CPD type, LMS type, a learning package when organisations have, look at these slides, answer these questions, and you get a tick in the box from a compliance perspective about DPA. And then they might hope nothing went wrong. And that's all got to change. So there has always been an information security element to looking after data. And this is Principle 7. And these next two slides are taken from the ICO's introduction to the Data Protection Act. So Principle 7 and how they describe it is quite telling about what's to come. So we've got design and organise it to fit in how you look after personal data and what the harm may result from it. So they don't prescribe controls like in 27002 or PCI, which are quite prescriptive books of internal controls. They talk in vague terms, but quite serious vague terms. And they talk about it has to be about well-trained staff and be ready to respond. Now those two things sometimes get left till later. Train your data protection officer, the people who support him, and train your employees and be ready to respond. So the other parts, throughout my slides, I'll always try and leave a link in to where the information came from if I borrowed it from somewhere else, so that the event organisers can share the slides. My slides are, you'll find them through my LinkedIn profile and slide decks. And if you want to go up and look where these things came from, you'll find these links. But if you talk about Data Protection Act 1998, if you want something to set your mind back as to how far away that was when Google registered, well, that's when they incorporated their company. So if you remember before Google, Excite, Hotbot, Yahoo, that's how long we're supposed to have been doing this level, this quality of information security. Any questions at that stage? And no is a valid answer. We'll skip on. So where is it going? The 2-year countdown already ticking away. Yeah, I've put the link in where this came from, CBR Online. And they talk about a couple of studies they did earlier this year with some very telling figures. So 87% of CIOs believe they'd be exposed to regulations. One of them. There's another number in there. 80% of IT professionals are not confident of ensuring compliance by the date. So the clock is ticking. It's really great that the event organisers are pushing this agenda. And it's really great that you're here today to pick up insights from vendors, from people who have lived it. But there's very few people actually on this message so far. If you search for other conferences that are pushing information security professionals, education on GDPR, you'll find they're pretty thin on the ground. So well done to the event organisers. Now, a little bonus. There was a couple of numbers in that last one, 80% and 87%. Whenever you see percentages being used to enforce a message, this is some helpful education. How to Lie with Statistics is a book from 1954, but it teaches you how to think in real terms about the message that's coming out of the numbers. I'd recommend finding it and trying it. The other one here is a list of cognitive biases. Also, be very careful. It's interesting reading. Cognitive biases. And this was, the country I was in wouldn't let me go to attrition.org, and it wouldn't let me go to Black Hat through the government firewall when I was making these. So I had to go to OSVDB for a link to Brian from Attrition, because he looked at research bias in the InfoSec industry and did some interesting presentations on that. That's just a little bonus. So there's a lot coming our way. Higher fines, tracking consent. And if you have put in a consent tracker, don't forget tracking removal of consent. Privacy by design, notification, the separation of controls and processes. Before, there wasn't so much, it wasn't clear how much of the responsibility lay with the processes if you forgot to put it in your contract. It's going to get a lot tighter in that area. What is sensitive data? The data subject rights and the appointment of a DPO. And we saw some great text in Neera's presentation. She teed this one up very nicely with all the details on articles and details on appointing a DPO. Mandate, this is the one that's scaring most. This is the one that will end up in a lot of vendor marketing material. This is what they'll scare you with. This is going to be the FUD storm for the next 2 years. Mandatory notification within 72 hours. I just wanted to, going back to this idea, this personal message I've got, that we should have been getting this right in 1998, we should have been getting this right in 1999. You get the message. We've been getting it wrong for a long time. There are already situations where you have to be ready to respond and notify. Those who are taking credit card details, and this is an industry Neera knows really well, but if in the details that you get from Visa about if you're compromised, you should, it's different between Visa Europe and Visa US, but has one bought the other one back now? So go with the US one, which is immediately identify your merchant bank and instruct a forensic investigator. That is as soon as you know you suspect you've lost card details, you should do that. And if you don't, then you're going to be trouble with your merchant bank, with the brands, with your history with PCI audits after that. So this is already out there, and this has been out there for many, many years. But I've yet to come across anyone who factors it into the data breach readiness plans. And I was saying there was the different publications from the different sides of the pond, 72 hours for suspected to Visa. So this isn't talking to your merchant bank account manager. This is talking to the brands in 3 days. And also, in some industries, they already have. In the news recently, there was this talk about appealing a fine. Well, the fine was because in telecoms, you already only have 24 hours. So forget the 3 days to get your act together, 24 hours to register with the ICO, that one. So it's worth knowing the industry you work in and what regulations and what commitments in contracts you're actually already bound to, and what the penalties are for not being ready for it. So here I'm talking about the converging with information security. So you'll hear a lot today about the technology side, the product side, the information security, cyber security message. And the two, I think, really have to come together through, because of all the technical controls around encryption, access rights management, privilege access, DFIR, so digital forensics incident response. It's all very technology based, which is why it's going to converge with information security. But the message is already out there for data quality people, recruitment people, legal people. So it's coming back to this holistic. Everybody has to get better at data governance, data protection, data breach prevention rather than planning. Thank you. We'll move on. So what can you do? So what I wanted to put in this section was some ideas for running the management function. And I'll explain that in the next few slides. So, disclaimer. This isn't something I've got to the end of. This is something I'm at the beginning of. In a current job that I'm doing, I'm having to do a refresh of a cyber management framework alongside a data protection, data privacy management framework. So coming from the technology background, we're used to a lot of the standards. So I mentioned the top 20 controls that have moved from SANS to CSC and now to CIS benchmarks and CPNI. NSA's Managed Network Plan, which is a project plan for delivering the top 20 controls, PCI 3.2, ISO 27002 and 27001. I've separated those out because you'll see on the next slide. SOC 1 and SOC 2. Anyone who was glad to see the back of SAS 70, it's back. It's going to be massive. It's going to be a big earner for the big four audit firms, maybe positions 5 and 6 as well. They are going, because they're going to come in, they're going to say, how do you do an assurance of the data protection in your supply chain? What you do is you get these different levels of long-term monitoring. So it's not an audit on the day, it's we want 6 months of evidence. So it's to help you get your house in order. And if you come from a financial services background, there's big overlap, data protection, cyber security, anti-money laundering, and TCF. Because the training you have to offer your staff for this has got to talk about not tipping off people you suspect. But there's a thing called the DSARs, Data Subject Access Requests, where someone can ask for what information you hold on them. So DSARs get special consideration in AML training, I think. Is that right? Yeah. And 9001, quality of your business documentation. Massive overlap with well-managed documentation for an ISO framework or even one of the other frameworks that you might not certify against. So I was talking about highlighting the difference between 27001 and 27002. It's coming back to data privacy very quickly. But it's about certifying the style of management you have. The management decisions is 27001. And 2 is the code of conduct, which is the book of controls, that become your information security policy, which is why they're always included in 27001. But it's about your management style. And so here we've got, endorsement from the CEO, the management policy that lays out who will do what and who will attend the steering group. Then you've got your risk management, and then you've got your strategy. And in a more advanced strategy, you'll have objectives, audit plan, communications plan, and measurements plan. But these sometimes get left off until you're a bit more mature. They're sometimes just a comment in a management policy. What I'm saying is you could take the same approach to getting your data protection running smoothly and run as a well-managed project. If you get your endorsement from the CEO and write up who's responsible for what, including what the DPO now is responsible for and who is going to help him, put that in your management policy. Your scope this time becomes your ICO registration. Your data governance forum allows you to meet with the head of legal, the head of HR, the head of procurement. Don't forget your head of procurement. Your head of external comms. Don't forget your and then instead of a risk management approach, you'd put the other things you'd need to tackle from a managing it well point of view. Data discovery, a different way of doing impact analysis to what you might be used to in ITIL. So score when you're looking at the systems you've got, don't just score them for availability, score them for confidentiality, PII, credit cards. Update your business impact analysis with the sensitive data flags. Information asset register, something that information security professionals have wanted for since forever and never seem to really get on top of. We're getting better at hardware asset registers. We're getting better at software asset registers. And we're better even putting taps in the network to find out what you're missing in SCM or HPS, this, that, and the other. But an information asset register, essential. And data-centric protection, data-centric threat modeling, data privacy, data governance, all driven by an accurate information asset register. So focus some thoughts on that. And then your complaints process or your access request process. Get it into your early planning. How are you going to deal with that? Because you're going to need to do with it. And I remember the flags to say, yes, you can hold my data. If someone writes to you and said, I don't want you to remove it, I don't want you to hold it anymore, the consent has been removed, you need to be able to retrospectively get that out so that it doesn't show up in a DSARS. And then you might have a similar set of strategy papers. But one thing that hasn't always sat in information security, but would sit in data protection, is your data breach readiness plan. Now, just another bonus slide. If you want to just get a hold of something and say, we're going to fix this, then fix this, then fix this, you might want to try coming up with a new message for the business. And I'm going to try find, fix, finish. And I'm going to read up. It comes from military jargon. But I think by coming to someone with a new message and saying, find, fix, finish, move on, little circles, you get the job done because you've only got 18 months left. So data discovery. You can have a look at your ICO registration for a starting point, but I was just talking about your ITIL might have most of your software, most of your hardware, won't have it all. Your BC team, their BIA might have already done some. Your vulnerability scanner might tell you where all the databases are. Your HR and legal people might be able to tell you what they worry about. I'm going to step it up a bit because I haven't got a clock here to watch.
Orange. You're orange.
Orange. So this was a very interesting article, 24 exciting things to do with an information asset register. So I'll pop the link in here, go and read it, and you'll see the value of getting to that stage of maturity with knowing where your data is. And these were the top 4 from those 25. And I thought they were great. And then it went on to some other really interesting things once you know where the data is. You don't need to go with their product, their service, any of it, but just interesting insights on an information asset register. So your internal training, both for the people who work with your DPO and other levels of training for further down. You're going to have to factor this in if you're having a good data protection management framework. You're going to have to cover these in terms that the people buying new systems or coming to you for advice understand. Fair and lawful processing, proportionate processing, accurate and up-to-date, data retention, data transfer. I think you should take the idea of a business impact analysis Step it up. What some people ask you for, a data security risk assessment. Call that your PIA, Privacy Impact Assessment. These are the ones I used to use. Now, I've been working on this since November 2014, or maybe earlier. And those are the ones that worked for me to go on record as saying we've made people tell us what the database schema is. We've made people tell us who dials in from where to maintain it. And go on record. Have two sections to the document. One you give to the project manager, one you sign off at the Data Protection Office. Think about where you're a controller and where you're a processor. I've worked in a lot of service providers. And get ready. Now, the Online Trust Alliance have for many years produced their Data Protection and Breach Readiness Guide. And it really helps you get on board with the message that it's going to involve legal. It's going to involve a communications plan. You want internal communications to stop a panic. You want external communications that are really well defined and really well thought out. And a lot of help on that from this side. So in summary, hopefully to get me back on time, there's a lot of overlap in my mind between the management element of an ISO 27001 run security ISMS and what you need to be doing to get a data protection program on track and remain well managed. Your steering group, your DPO, we've discussed them during the slides, and the slides will be made available. So take it seriously. Time is running out if you want to be one of the people who gets it right. And get started if you haven't. Take away some ideas from today. Use what you've learned as information security functions have matured, what worked, what didn't, what documents get looked at once a year, what get looked at once a day. Tailor it to fit your organisation. These are common sense. And network with like-minded people. Get it in your next job description that you get time out to go to conferences. You get time out to go out in the evening to meetups. Talk to other people. It's the fastest way to get on is networking. Time is precious. I like that one.
Thank you.